Hey, welcome back to the table. Quite a bit of time has gone by. I had to do a lot of rules checking. This setup was actually quite a beast. And so let me correct a few things from the setup. I know that's crazy. We're on video 3 and I'm still talking setup, but I got to do it. So the answer to the question regarding the white versus black FFs is that they're all the same. So the crazy thing that happened is there's not enough components to put fortification markers on all the spots. So per the game rules, the designer does list that when you get within 3 spaces or 3 hexes of a fortification area, then it automatically, like a whack-a-mole, it just appears. So the idea is that these ones that are over here in Sector 4, we don't have to populate those yet. And that's what he recommends, is don't even fill in Sector 4 at all, and then just do everything over here in Sector 1, 2, and 3. So you can see that I sort of did that. There is one massive one here that I didn't do, and I don't think I have the ability to do. But that's the only one, I think, in Sector 3 I didn't have the capability of doing. And so we'll just take care of that later. That's the big thing. And then there's this weird one. There's an email here. Well, it's a Board Game Geek message, but I printed it out using email here. There's an errata for fort setup. There's going to be a Class 1 fort in the L3 with a unit from a reserve pool taken during setup. And I just wanted to point out that L3 is this little orange spot right here. And you can see there's no F on it. And so we're supposed to just take a unit from the reserve and put it there. And then there needs to be a Class 1 fort. And I'm pretty sure there's no Class 1 fort available. So maybe what I want to do is grab a Class 1 from somewhere else, just so we don't forget, right? Because there's no F on that one. That prevents us from forgetting that there's an F there. It bothers me a lot because there's so many details to this game, and we're going to start playing and it's going to be hours before I get over to here. And it might be days from a video perspective because, we have to upload videos to YouTube and there's things called sleep and stuff like that I may have to do. By the time I get there, I'm not going to remember that I still have to put fortifications down. It really bothers me. I did get a little testy on Board Game Geek, and I just want to say that I know a lot of work was put into this game. It's just this was crap, and I'm calling it crap for what it is. I'm not dismissing all the work that was put into it. It's just that you work so hard. I mean, for Pete's sakes, have the tokens that you need. I just can't defend it. But anyways, there's a lot of things here that we need to talk about. The next thing with setup is you can see I placed all the units out. These are the units that are going to be landing. And we have units that are in the beach boxes, and then we have like a wave 2. Now the rules are really nebulous on wave 2, but the idea is these units are going to take fire and then land, and we're going to go through that sequence, and it's just like other D-Day games. But the Wave 2 doesn't take fire. They just land, but they do it at the end. And so they don't land with everybody else. They're going to land, and I believe they land after, dang it, I should have wrote it down. I'm pretty sure they land after the action phase. So we're going to land and then do our actions, and then they land later. It's like a wave. That's what the wave 2 means. You would think that it would be in the landing rules. It's not. And so now I got to figure out where I found that. Always annoying. And I know I read this somewhere, and it's going to kill me now because it's not in the amphibious operations phase, which is even doubly worse. Here it is. It's in the setup for scenario 1. Tank and engineer units land on game turn 1, second wave. Do so at the end of the U.S. action phase, after all other actions are complete. They go through the same landing procedure that's normally conducted, with the exception that after these landings, they may not move. Oh, so they can actually get hit too. Okay. So anyways, we did that, and it's set up. And the really important thing is that some of these units, like this here, it says 1CST ASE. If you look here, it says 1AST ASE. These two units are poised to go in red 1 and red 2. These two units are set up to go in green and red 1 according to this setup chart. But if you read the rule book, it says this way in the rule book. It's completely flipped. So the rule book and this don't agree. I don't know which one is the master. I can tell you that it's annoying because it's yet another issue with the game, but they're the exact same strength units, so it's no big deal. So don't get too upset about it. But okay, so I have a lot of notes. There's a lot of things I want to go through before we start. I know some of you are like, already skipped to video 3 just to see playthrough, and I'm 6 minutes in and I'm telling you we're not starting playthrough yet. We're going to talk about a few rules, at least the minimum that we need to get started, and some of it's going to be comparison to other D-Day games, which I know if you've never played other D-Day games, maybe it won't be as useful for you. And just my apologies. I'm going to give this warning right now. This is a game that has a whole lot of rules. I've read them, I understand them, but that does not mean that I remember them. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to be taking a lot of stops in this game to read rules and to make sure we get it right. And then there's things like tanks. Well, right now tanks aren't in the game, but the moment that we encounter a tank, I'm going to have to stop, and we're going to, and I'm the kind of person that I like to let you read the rules with me. And so I don't like pause the video and say, I'll be back with the answer. I don't do that. And I know that annoys some people. And that's not my thing. My mantra and my goal of doing these videos is that people are joining me at the table. So that means you're joining me at the table to read rules. And so sometimes that's what we're going to do, and we'll do it together. So I know that may not be your cup of tea. And I'm very aware of it, and I promise I will minimize it as much as I can. But I would rather get the rule correct than not correct, and I don't want to upload a lot of 10-minute videos. So, you know, if I'm 50 minutes in and I need to check a rule, then maybe, yeah, I'll stop it, and I'll do it offline and then come back with the answer. But if I'm only 10 minutes in, you might not see me do that. Anyways, thank you for your forgiveness in advance. That's all I have to say about that. Let's move on. The rule book has this new thing called line of sight. So line of sight is every one of these units can project field of fire, 2 hexes away around it, and then it gets reduced by terrain and other modifiers. And it could be increased if it's on a hill and things like that. So there's this big line of sight section, and it's quite a lot of rules, to be quite honest, and they're not simple rules. It cracks me up because apparently the designer of this game has never played Fantasy Flight Games anything, or any miniature war game that involves miniatures, because if he did, he would know that line of sight is the #1 controversial thing in every miniatures game ever on the planet. And line of sight is never cut and dry. It's never easy. There's Board Game Geek debates that go into 20 pages of responses and people insulting each other because they think hexes are better, or they think that pentagons are better. I mean, it just boggles your mind. Diagonal movement versus orthogonal movement. I can just tell you right now that is just the most amazing sequence of confusion that will ever be collected, and it's all because of line of sight. And so this game has line of sight, and it has line of sight because I think they were attempting to remove all the dots. So remember, I complained that I don't like the fact that all the dots are missing. And so the reason the dots are missing is because we could calculate the line of sight ourselves. So we don't need dots on the board. We can just figure it out by following the line of sight rules. How fun does that sound to you? And I'm saying that both mockingly and seriously. It's not a very fun concept. But this line of sight idea is the reason why it doesn't exist. I'm not... so I was trying to find the rules here for it. Let me see if I can find it. I know, oh, here we go, page 13. It's under Japanese fire. So, line of sight starts here, and you can see it has all this blocking terrain, and then it has elevation calculations, and then it has bluffs, and then beaches, and then smoke, and it goes on and on and on. All of this is meant to replace those dots, which you can look at and within a half second or a split second automatically know how to resolve it. So I'm going to tell you my answer to these line of sight rules, and it will be done right here. Okay, so that's my answer to that. We're not doing it. I'm not getting into it, and I'm not doing it. It's that simple. So I guess I praise the designer for not getting rid of it completely, so what this is the compromise, right? Because there's going to be codgers like me who are like going, oh, hell no. And so I do have to rely on this to figure out my field of fire. Now, I could use these line of sight rules. I can go here and say, okay, this guy shoots 2 this way and 2 that way. So these are all intents. And so let's double check that. I mean, I go to F4 right here. And look, he does have 2 intents, but look at this one. This one's not intense. Somehow it got reduced. I look over here. I don't see how it got reduced. Do you? I don't. Last thing in the world I'm going to sit there and do is figure out why that one is reduced and these ones are not. With that said, we're just going to rely on this. And I'm ignoring line of sight rules. I'm not going to read them to you. I'm not going to explain them to you. We're just moving on. And this is going to be our Bible. If this says we can hit, then we can hit. And just so you know, I did confirm that when we're shooting at them, as long as they can see us, we can see them. That's been pretty consistent throughout the rulebook, and that's very consistent with Omaha Beach and the other D-Day games. So we're going to follow that mantra. If I'm wrong, feel free to complain in the comments, and if you get too rude about it, I'll just mute you. But the point is I'm not doing it. It's a stupid decision, and so I'm making that affirmative statement on this. And I'm not going to sit here and calculate where intense fire is every single turn. No way. I will look at this thing, and it's already a pain in the butt. But as far as I'm concerned, if Compass Games releases a new map with these printed on, I will pay $40 for it. And I know that that's robbing me blind, considering that's almost the cost of this entire game. It's probably half the cost, but still, I will do it because I just refuse to do line of sight rules. I've played enough miniature wargaming. I'm not doing it. And that's it. Okay, moving on. Some other quick things we gotta go over. This email, or this Board Game Geek post, by the way, it's in an FAQ that Joe also, the designer, also affirmed. It's got a really nice count. This is how many level 1 forts you need to put out, level 2, etc. So very helpful. Actually, these ones are the ones that get 2 forts, and then these are the ones that get 1 fort that are level 1 and 1 fort that are level 2. Very helpful. So when you're doing your setup, if you can get this, it's from the Q&A document. It's good. So one other thing that's new, I'm going to just go over it right now. Usually when Japanese fire, these colors determine which positions fire. So a red position, a purple position, or a blue. There are now black positions in this game, and the black positions fire every round no matter what. It doesn't matter what you draw. They always fire. And what's an example of a black position? It's this guy right here. And what's ironic is they put the black position dots on because they wanted to demonstrate how important that is, which I get it, but they're all important as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you see this thing with the black line above it, what that means is if there's a black position available, the purple action won't occur. So instead of the purple happening, the black will do this M action. So this action M will actually be done by an M or a black position instead of the purple position, which is like down here. So it's assumed that this one would normally fire. Instead of him firing, this one would do the M action instead, and purple would do nothing. They don't even fire. The rules don't state it that clearly, but I read it again and again, and that's my interpretation of that. So I know I'm getting a little ahead of the game, but I want folks that are new to just understand that that this black thing is new for all of us who've played D-Day games, and it's unique to this one. This top here is for landings, and we're going to get into that as soon as we start our gameplay, which I promise will be soon. And then we have events, and then this is, of course, for Japanese fire. It's also used to resolve many, many other things, but it's a very interesting concept in the game. And I'm actually going to leave this card out because the first thing you do in the game is you draw a card. So I'm going to do that, and we'll talk about what it does in a second, but I'm just going to set it aside. All right, so what other stuff do we have? When you're doing setup, the Sector 2 here, remember it says in Sector 2 in these asterisks, these units may not set up within 3 hexes of a beach hex. So you may, in your game, run into, well, hold on a second, 3 hexes of a beach hex, 1, 2, 3, etc. You lay everything out, and then you realize you actually have more beach hexes than you have units. So the designer clarified that it is the northern beach hexes don't count. It's only these southern beach hexes with the landings, these ones. Those ones aren't open yet or activated. So it's only these ones that you line up with these special asterisk units, and then you fill in the rest as you need to. Okay, and then Sector 3, if you follow the setup perfectly, you're going to find that you placed all the units, and there's actually one more spot in Sector 3 than there are units. And so the designer said that's a mistake in the rules, and that you need to just use one from the reserve. Just grab a random one from the reserve and fill in the last spot. And he didn't say where, so I made sure it wasn't one of the black positions. So that was how I handled that. And this is not, oh yeah, this is a fort. I keep forgetting, we just don't have the fortification. I'm like, why do I have a unit there? Okay, so that's it for the setup observations. There are a few other things. We're doing Scenario 6. So in Scenario 6 rulebook, you're going to find in the back, and just to help you out, it's on... So when you do the setup, it says that the U.S. units are automatically in command until game turn 7. So if you've played previous Omaha Beach games, you usually get 2 actions per action round. what this rule is saying is that all of your units get an action. So everybody has an action. There is no such thing as I have action units anymore, or there's no action tokens in the entire game. You have to keep your units under command, and as long as they're under command, every unit that you have available to you gets to move, attack, do whatever. So that's a huge change from other D-Day games. I actually think it's an awesome change, but obviously it also means that we're going to get punched in the nuts a little bit more, because since we get to move all these units, we're going to have a lot of punitive stuff too. Okay, so that's the first thing. And this is just saying that until game turn 7, we don't even have to worry about our HQ units. I mean, we can just go and be happy. There's this concept of the 3rd Marine Regiment. I can add them anytime I want after turn 7, but I have to shorten the overall scenario, and there's a little formula here. So the game won't last as long if I add the 3rd Regiment earlier. And I don't know what the good strategy is with that. I have no clue. But I'm just letting you know that's an option we have, and maybe we want to wait a little bit before we do it. I don't think we want to do it right on turn 7, although that sounds like a pretty cool idea. And then this is the part I was trying to show you. U.S. Division has 60 replacement infantry steps available to it, and then 24 tank and engineer. So this is where this little chart comes in. And so I just wanted to point out that you need to grab, so this one says replacement engineer points, replacement tank points. And so those go on 24 for the Americans. And so if our tanks take damage or engineers take damage, we can spend those points to replenish them. That's the idea. And then every division has 60 points. So I have, see, this says 4th Division replacement, 5th and 3rd. So these are used to replenish our infantry that take damage. Now, another gripe with this game is I have 60 points, and look at this, it only goes up to 40. So what I did was I put it on the 20th spot of the Japanese track. So by putting it on the 20th spot, I'm at 60. And then after I, lose 10, I'll be here. After I lose 20, I'll be here. And then after I lose 21, I'll finally be on the 39th spot. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to put the US one markers on the Japanese track and just count the Japanese track as if it was an extension of my track. I don't see any harm in that. So don't complain about it too much. Now the Japanese have artillery, and their artillery has strength. And this is extremely different from the previous D-Day games. And the one cool thing they did is they put the, so for example, this says Sector 3 right here. And this will say Sector 1. And of course, the other one says Sector 4. So Sector 4 is 10. Let me show you how this works. I have a note card that I wrote down because we have to actually calculate this and keep track of it. For every artillery position, they get 1 point. For every hill, it's worth 2 points. And for every sector, or for Sector 1, they're worth 3 points. So Sector 1 has a special rule, okay? So let's do like Sector 4, for example. Here, you can see an artillery. Even if it's unoccupied, it's still an artillery. So that counts as 1. And then this is a hill, and you know it's a hill because of the triangle. So that's 2 for 3. Okay, and then you have to just look for more artillery that's in Sector 4. So this is 1 for 4. There's 1 for 5. There's 1 for 6. There's 2 for 8. And there's 2 more for 10. And that's how you get to the 10 calculation that it starts you off with. So if you ever were to destroy an artillery here, which you can, there's these destroyed artillery markers that you place once you destroy them. Once you destroy that artillery, then this will be permanently reduced. And obviously, the way you do that is you can do it through a barrage, or you can do it by occupying it with a US unit. So every sector has an artillery strength value. Now, when artillery happens, which is actually a part of every single turn after game turn 7. It will occur on game turn 3 and 6, and then every turn after that, it'll just be a part of our turn. What they do is they just blast the crap out of Americans, and they can damage an infinite number of Americans based on their artillery strength. Now, you might be thinking, whoa. I'm noticing that this one has 28 strength of artillery. So does that mean that 28 units are taking damage? No. What you do is you draw a card like this, and see how it says divided by 9. So you would do 28 divided by 9, and I can't remember if we round up or round down, but the point is then that determines how many hits we take. Now, during the artillery phase, we're going to draw a card for each sector. And so for Sector 1, if it's taking artillery damage, then we would use the Sector 1 artillery value, and we draw a card, and we need to find this symbol. This symbol means that artillery will happen. If that symbol was gone, then no artillery happens that turn. So then we move to the next sector, and then the next sector. But if we see it, then we have to do that calculation I was just explaining. And then I have written down here a big giant priority list of who takes damage from artillery. So that's, I knew I'm going to need this, so I wrote it down based on reading the rules. There is no cheat sheet for it. I'm a little disappointed in that. I hope, and I'm going to maybe get on Board Game Geek and see if there's some nerd probably printed one out already, and that would be awesome. I'm always happy for the nerds. They make my life better. So that's how that works. Now, let's say we get to Sector 3. There is no artillery in Sector 2, by the way, if you're wondering about that. Our Sector 3, for example, is an interesting one. So let's say artillery is going to hit Sector 3. Then we use all of the Sector 3's artillery number, and then we add half of Sector 4. So basically, the sectors support each other. They actually help each other. So it's a very big deal, and we'll get more into it when artillery actually happens. But it's a huge change from previous games. The other thing is like I said, black units always fire even if they're disrupted. So if you disrupt a black unit, and when I mean black unit, I mean a position group. So this black position group, it fires every time, and even if it's disrupted, it fires. But what happens is that the field of fire gets downgraded. So if this position group if both of these were disrupted, because these are one position group, you have to disrupt both in order for it to happen. These would be clear, and then these would be steady fire instead of intense. I hope that makes sense. Another thing I want to point out is we're going to be getting into the landing game, and you can see that there's a black here. So these guys on the mountain are actually going to guarantee hit, because black always fires. And so it doesn't matter what card we draw, black is hitting. And so that's already happening. And then you can see here there's a black landing spot. So if we land there, we take hits from black, and it's intense. So black is miserable, and they're doing it from right up here on their little throne on the mountain. A bunch of upset dwarves, or the Smaug is upset. We went after his gold. Okay. A big change from previous games is I put a star here because I wanted to remember to mention this to those of you who've played previous D-Day games. In the past, when you're resolving hits from a Japanese position, we always hit the most steps first. That was always the top priority. But in this game, it's flip-flopped. It's always the closest and then the most steps. So that's a big change. And I need to remember this because I'm so used to playing the other way that I'm going to get this wrong. I know I will. But the MG changed a little bit. So when machine gun happens, we'll talk about that. Something new, you can take a hit to avoid getting disrupted, but only if your symbol is not matching the card. Okay? You can disrupt 2 units to avoid taking a step loss. An armor symbol does 2 hits against armor if it's intense. It'll disrupt armor if it's steady. So the armor symbol is very deadly against armor. the way the rules word it, what you're doing is you're taking your normal one hit because you're in an intense, right? Armor always takes a hit in an intense fire, but you're taking your normal one hit and then you get a bonus hit. That's what the rules are trying to explain. So that's my notes with Japanese fire and artillery. And if you're very new to the game, you've never played before, I will slow down and explain these as we get to these. I just wanted to give a brief summary before we start for those who know how this works. 10 steps is a concentrated unit in this game. The stacking limit is 2 infantry plus 2 other tanks or engineers. Headquarters, heroes, garrisons do not count. So we can stack 4 if we get it right. Tanks have an attack range of 2, barrage range of 3, but they only say 4-3. So in the past, that was always the attack range. It's not in this game. You cannot remove disruption on your turn if you're next to an undisrupted Japanese unit. You're disrupted forever. It's insane. And then movement requires a protractor now. I think we need a doctoral thesis to discuss movement, and we'll worry about that when we get there. And then, like I said, if you're in command, we have unlimited actions. Close combat has not changed dramatically from Pelelu. If you remember the rules for Pelelu, it's actually almost identical in terms of how it's resolved. The only thing that changes is how many cards, like the situations that causes you to get a card. That changes. And then there's a max of 5 cards per side, so we can't just overload them and win. Fortifications are a very, very big deal in this game. I'm not going to get into those until we get there. And to be quite honest, there's so many rules for fortification, I would have to break out the rule book anyways. So I have all these little notes that I took, and we're going to use those to get cracking. One last thing. The U.S. attack chart is extremely different from previous D-Day games. This will not look familiar to you at all. I have to say that I think this is quite innovative. I like it. I mean, here's the thing. The old attack chart was easy to memorize, so it was very easy to know, should I attack or shouldn't I? Now this has become a math exercise, but I do like it. It's very versatile. And the same with the barrage. The designers get some pretty cool stuff. So like if you fail to meet the weapons requirements, it's not a guaranteed bad thing now. You can still defeat them pretty easily if you have enough strength. So I like that. And this might look familiar, but we'll get into all that as we play. So 33 minutes in, I am guaranteeing somebody's going to rage and say, I made it to the third video, 33 minutes in, and you have not yet started a single game turn. That's fine. I just want to remind everybody, I've spent 2.5 hours setting this game up and making sure I understood the setup rules and dealing with all the crappy FAQ rule errors and all that other stuff. So if it took you 30 minutes to get to this, and it took me 2.5 hours, and I saved you time, I consider that to be time well spent for you. So let's go with that. All right, first thing you do is you draw a card, and you can all you're looking for is this. So red, purple, blue. So what's going to happen is the Japanese units are getting disrupted because we did bombing runs basically before we tried to land. So red, purple, blue. They said to only disrupt the areas that are 3 hexes from your landing beach, and I agree. Pelelu had you disrupt the entire game board. But basically, red is disrupted, purple is disrupted, and blue is disrupted. Okay? So that helps. It doesn't, dramatically help, but it does help a lot. And now we get to land. And so let's draw our amphibious cards. I'm going to scoot this over. I have a feeling I very much miss having my cards to my left. That's how I've played every other game, and old habits are kicking in here. So I'm going to grab the deck of cards and we're going to move them to my left. That's where they've been the entire series. Okay, so here's where we're at. We're starting the amphibious phase. We're going to conduct the landing checks. That's what we're doing right now. Then after we do the landing checks, we're going to land on the beach, and then we have to place the unit scheduled to arrive next turn. Okay, and then later on in turn 7, we would get an HQ phase, which that doesn't happen until much later. But this is what we're doing, just to give you a point of reference. And so this is the phase number we're on, we're on phase 1. They make this nice and big so you can actually put your cards on as you're going. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually just going to keep my cards over here. And don't worry, the space-time continuum won't get disrupted for that. And I'm going to just take these. We're going to use these eventually, but I just need to set them off to the side. Okay, so we start and we go left to right, and we're doing wave 1. So these guys are wave 2, and those are later. We don't do those yet. So we're going to start with this wave, and when you're setting up, I know I'm getting back into the setup question again, but I want to make sure it's very clear. It says 1/28 and 2/28. And so what that means, and I know I probably talked about this already, but there's the 1st Battalion, 28th Regiment is what this is. So it's the 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 28th Regiment is what's landing. And then they each have their own battalion headquarters. So this is the 1st Battalion headquarters, and this is 2nd Battalion headquarters. The battalion headquarters provides command to everybody in their battalion, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I have to look up. I think you can provide command to one other unit. I mean, the HQ rules are pretty involved, but we don't have to worry about any of that right now, because for the first 7 turns, everybody's in command. It doesn't matter where they are or what not. These units are what's called infantry HQs or battalion HQs. And what they are is they're actual infantry units. They do fighting. They do hand-to-hand fighting themselves. They're up in the front lines, but they're also an HQ unit. There's a regimental HQ that comes later, and then there's even a battalion HQ. So anyways, I just wanted to get to the point that this HQ is for these units. So anyways, let's dive in. First thing we do is we draw and we ignore everything except for the top. And so you can see that blue diamond is getting hit and there's a drift right. Okay, so first thing you do is you check the boxes, and you can see there's a blue box here. So that means blue is firing onto this beach, and the blue that's firing on the beach is this guy right here. And we also know that black is firing on the beach. The part that's harder is how many black is, because here's the thing, you take damage for every Japanese, like if this had a depth marker, you would take 2 damage. So we're going to take 1 from blue for sure. The black is the part that's a little more nebulous, is who from black is projecting onto the beach. And this is where the line of sight rules come in. I know, I could just hear somebody saying it. I think it's this, this fortress here on A4. And what that means is you would take a hit from 1, 2, 3, 4. You would take 4 hits. Because I think the fortifications count as a marker for that. I'm going to make sure. Fortifications are sort of new in this game. They were in Pelelu, but not like this. Yeah, Japanese unit, depth marker, and fortification. So they're going to do 4 hits, and blue will do 1 hit. Now you might be thinking, holy cow, that's a lot of hits. It is, except you got to remember we're only hitting diamonds. So this one takes a hit, and this one takes a hit, and everybody else is fine. So we really only took 2 hits. Okay, so that's where this new step system comes in. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of it, but the step loss 1 is the side you use. So this one is now reduced to just 3 weapons. He is down to 3 steps, and he can only use a flamethrower, an MG, and a bazooka. And I think the convention is you want to put it below him, but then you got to remember that he has a step loss below him, so this is actually a little tough. I actually would have appreciated it more if this was a different color, because then it would have been more vibrant, and when you're looking at a stack, I could sort of stagger the stack like this, and then, you know, easily see, hey, this guy has a step loss. I don't know, that's some feedback. I think it would have been a lot easier if that was maybe a different color. Okay, so both of them took a loss, and it looks like they're full strength, but they're not. That's what I don't like about it. I'm tempted to say let's do it this way, but I know that's not what the rules say, so we'll try to do it the rules way. Okay, and then everybody's now going to get to land, but here's where the wicket gets sticky. If you land, you are subjected to the stacking limit of 4. And in other games, you could always go over the stacking limit, and as long as by the end of your turn you're not over it, you're fine. In this game, that is not true. If you ever go over your stacking limit at any point, the entire stack becomes disrupted. It's brutal, folks. You don't want to be disrupted. That's basically like you lose a turn. That's what it does. You don't get to attack. You don't get to do anything. And if you're next to a Japanese unit and you're disrupted, you're going to stay that way forever. You can't ever undisrupt yourself. So, so that's the part that's brutal about this. Now, in order to avoid getting disrupted, you could always take a step loss. You can also disrupt 2 people in order to avoid taking a hit. But I don't think you can do that when you're trying to land. I think that's more for when you are on land. So anyways, without further ado, 2 infantry units can land, and so can in the headquarters. But if we land this infantry unit on top of that, all of them would get disrupted. So I can land, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to land the... See, this is even worse, because look, this is a intense fire. So if you land here, you're for sure taking a hit. So then what I'm going to do is everybody else is just staying in the water. And that's a choice you can make. You can keep everybody else in the water. And if you do that, they are now going to get hit the next time we draw a card. Black will hit here. And so you might be thinking, well, why are you staying out here? If black's going to hit you here and black's going to hit you there, what's the difference? It's a very good point, except that when you're in the intense fire, you get hit no matter what your symbol is. Here, we only got hit if we were a diamond, right? There, you get hit no matter what. So that's why we're going to wait. This is just a nasty, nasty spot. I don't think we want to go here. Also, when you get hit by an unrevealed unit, you get disrupted. So that's the other thing. By getting hit in the water, you're not getting disrupted. If you go here, you get disrupted. Okay? So we're just avoiding it. We can't deal with it. And I also want you to see that it's not just a black spot. I mean, look at this. It has intense fire from green and red, orange, and brown. All of them are intense fire. This is the death. This is just a meat grinder right there. So this one is a much better spot. You do get attacked by green and orange, but it's a much, much safer spot. Okay, so the drawback is we have a bottleneck here. And you can see the bottleneck is we're just floating and waiting to land. And that's how that's going to work. Sorry if I'm belaboring that too much, but it's a very important thing to understand. And it's also new to this game. Other games, you land no matter what. Okay, so now we move to this one, and here's the good news. There's no black here. So we don't have to worry about black. And we draw, now you might be wondering, what's the deal with these white squares? Or you can see there's a white square here. Or sometimes like over here, if you look really closely, you'll see that all the green circles have a dot in them. They added that for colorblind. So if you're not colorblind, you don't have to worry about it. But if you are, then that helps you to identify that that's a brown. So anyways, we now had a brown. And if you look here, there is a brown, so we do get hit. Brown is located where? So I think it's this brown over here that's hitting us, this one. So he is able to hit us in this beach over here. So he's 1 unit. So that means he only damages 1 person. And you can see it's a triangle. Unfortunately, there was only 1 person to hit. So it's not like it helped us that much. And see, my old habit is I was getting ready to flip it over because that's the way the old games used to work. Okay, so here's our step loss for the triangle. All right, so now we get to land. And I'm going to land the 2 full strength units. Leave the step loss 1 out. Oh, we had a drift. Remember we had a drift on that last one. It was drift right. Drift right means we have to pick one of these diamonds and drift it to the right. So that means one of these guys who got hurt is actually over here now. And he does not take damage with him being over here. He gets to just land. Unless, of course, we choose to keep him out here. Okay, so let's look at our beaches. So already we're annoyed because we have to look over here to see where we can land. This is our beach approach. And you can see they're both the same. It's just golden red, golden red. Okay, so we're going to land on both beaches. So let's go back. I have this stack built up, and we're going to land it. Where should we land it? We'll land it there. And then we have this stack, which is a step loss and a step loss. And they're going to land here. So that one we did get fully landed. Okay. Oh, I have to back up. One of them drifts right. So I'm going to take the step loss, and I'm just going to look real quick. It's the 2nd Battalion is the one that took the hit, the 27th Regiment. So that means this guy actually had to drift to the right. So this one lands by himself, like that. Okay? I hope that makes sense. All right, so now we move on to, I think this is, what's it called? Red 2. Same deal, brown triangle. Brown is still hitting here. It does not hit this guy because remember he drifted. And there is no drift on this one. So the brown triangle takes a hit. So we just got to grab another triangle and get a step loss marker. And so we have 2 damaged guys. Now let's look at this beach approach. Red and purple, so it's 6 or 1/2. We definitely need to bull rush purple. So I'm going to land this is a full strength unit and another full strength unit. We're going to just do two full strength units with an HQ there. And then the weaker one that drifted over will go there. And where the heck is my other? Oh, there we go. And then both of the ones that took a step loss will be there. So I'm sort of staggering my full strength and half strength. See how that works out. Okay, before I move on to this, we triggered another new rule that's very new to this game. And I'm not very familiar with it. So I'm going to pull out the rule book again. Because I know what we triggered, but I just want to make sure we get it right. It's a really goofy one. And I want to make sure it's a movement trigger. When you're within a certain number of spaces of an unoccupied Japanese hex, there's a chance that they will actually get new units. Yes, it's annoying. And of course, now I got to remember where the heck. Oh, now I can't find it. It's not under movement. So the rule I'm looking for is when you are approaching an unoccupied Japanese position. There is a procedure where they get reinforcements. It's a potential for reinforcements. You have to actually draw a card. I even remember, like, you're supposed to draw a card and you have to match the color. I just don't remember where it is in the rule book now. So I'm going to exercise the option I just gave you. I'm at 51 minutes. So let me find this, and then I'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome. And yes, we spent 51 minutes to land 3 portions of our beach, but I promise it will start going quicker. We just want to get all the rules out of the way and make sure everybody's on the same page and understanding what's happening. Thank you.